Good morning, Rabbi Isai. We're holding Daf Tzadik Zayin Omid Beis, like 12 lines from the bottom. Ashkechon chatos d'miskadeshes bebilua. We finished talking about when a chatos touches another, whatever it is, touches other meat, so that other meat has the same halacha as the chatos. So let's say if it touches chulin, the chulin becomes like a chatos. If it touches kachim kalim, so we treat the kachim kalim like a chatos, so you can only eat it for one day, all the chumras of the chatos. Says the Gemara, we see that halacha only by a chatos. How do you know that halacha applies to all korbanos? So if, let's say, shlamim touches chulin, the chulin will become like the shlamim. How do I know that? Shar kachim enola. Omar Shmuel Mishum Rebbe Eliezer Zois HaTorah LaOila VeLaMincha. That what all the korbanos, you learn all the korbanos from each other. So you have different things. Gemara is going to go through it, and eventually we're going to get to the point where we see that just like a chatos has the ability to touch another carbon, another food, and that food becomes like the chatos, so too the shlamim, the oila, whatever it is, it has the same ability from this pasuk. So it says the Gemara, Zois HaTorah LaOila VeLaMincha VeLaChatos. And we're going to go through all these korbanos, the oila, the mincha, the chatos, VeLaOsham, VeLaMiluim, VeLaZevachim. So before we get to chatos, which is really on the next amud, so we're going to go through some other korbanos. Oila, what do we learn from oila? Ki oila, all korbanos are similar to oila. Ma oila tu nakli, just like the oila requires a vessel, avkol tu nakli, so to all korbanos need a vessel. My kli, which kli? Ilema mizrak, if you're referring to the kli that catches the blood, so it's not a real, this is fake, right? It didn't have a see-through glass in there, but it's the idea. I really liked the chap of the artist. So if you're saying that all korbanos, you need to receive the blood in such a kli, we see the same halacha by the shlamim of the community. Vayikach Moshe chatzi adam ve'yasem ba'agonos. So the Gemara says it can't be the agonos, the kli, the cup. Why? Because we already have that by shlamim. Vayikach Moshe chatzi adam ve'yasem ba'agonos. Elo, it must be sakin. Just like a oila requires a knife to do the shchita, so to all the korbanos. It has to be made out of metal. It can't be made out of wood, stone. Why? The idea is that you should use a kli sharis. Kli sharis can't be wood, it can't be stone. V'oila gufam and how do I know that the oila requires a knife? It says by Avram Avinu, by the Akedah, v'yishlach Avram es yodai, v'yikach semacheles. He took the knife. And Yitzchak was the oila. He took the ram instead of the oila, his son. He took the oila, the ram, the oila, instead of his son Yitzchak. In other words, Yitzchak was the oila. So that's one carbon. Mincha. What do I do with the word mincha? Mincha is only eaten by a male kohen. So too, all korbanos eaten by male kohanim. Mahi, which one in particular? Ichatas v'asham. We're talking about chatas and asham. They have to be a male kohen. It says before in the pasuk. So what am I learning from a mincha? Vishalmi tzibur, if it comes to talk about the shlamim of the community, meribuy the krasi, that we get from the other pasuk. From this pasuk we learn limit al shami tzibur shedim nechalam elazirkuna. Shlamim also you need a zachar kain. Says Gemara, you're right. We have other psukim, but some learn it from because you and some learn from our pasuk mincha tanoi daf tzadik ches amud aleph on top. There's two ways to learn. You need a zachar kain. Okay, now we move on, and this is the part that we need. Chatos, what I learned from the word chatos, ma chatos miskadeshes bibilua, just like a chatos, if this is the chatos and it touches this carbon has the same halacha as the chatos, so too all korbanos. Avkol miskadeshes bibilua. Asham, what I learned from the word asham, ma asham ein shafer v'shilya kaddish boy. So here's something interesting. We know that you have to, from every carbon, you have to take the kidneys, the skirt steak, the fat, you put it on the mizbeach. What about if an animal has a fetus? You shech the carbon and it has a fetus. Do you have to put the kidneys and the fat of that fetus onto the mizbeach? So the Gemara says no. Why? Because we learn from Asham. Now here's what's interesting. Asham is a zachar. Asham is not a keva. It cannot get pregnant. But the Gemara is saying that just like this male Asham, its fetus doesn't have a kedusha. Why doesn't it have a kedusha? Because it doesn't have a fetus. It's impossible for it to have a fetus. So mela, every other carbon also their fetus. You don't take the kidneys and the fat and put it on the mizbeach. The problem with that is, wait a minute, it's a male. It can't have. How can you learn something that could give birth from a carbon that can't give birth? So that concept is called donim, e efshar me efshar. Mark, did you tell Benny? If he wants, he could just come in. By the time he gets here, it'll be over. But okay. Shkoyach. So donim efshar me efshar. So let's see inside. Says the Gemara. Let's see inside. Osham ma osham ain't shofer v'shili kodesh boy. The placenta, the fetus doesn't have kedusha. In other words, you don't have to put the two klayos on the mizbeach. Afkal ain't shofer v'shili kodesh boy. So to any other carbon doesn't have kedusha. Kasavar, why? Vlad is kedashim b'havayasan kedashim. The offspring of kachim only becomes kaddish when they give birth, when they comes into the world, and not in utero, something like that. And v'donim efshar mishi efshar, and I'm able to learn on a keva from a zachar, even though a zachar cannot have offspring. But we say, oh, just like the zachar, it doesn't have any kedusha. Their offspring doesn't have a kedusha. Why? Because they don't even have. They can't. It's not possible to have offspring. So to the nekeva, when it is possible to have offspring, their offspring doesn't have kedusha. Miluim. What do I do with the word miluim in this pasuk here? Let's just see the pasuk again. Why not? Zois ha'toira la'oila lamincha. We learned the oila, the mincha, the chatas, la'asham, the miluim. The only thing left is l'miluim l'zevachim. Miluim ma'miluim ma'isreim b'sreifa ve'ein balechayim b'ma'isreim. When you have leftover miluim, which we call noisar, part of the carbon that was left overnight, what do you do with it? You have to burn it. So now we're going to jump from there to something else that's noisar, that's extra. When you bring a carbon and it gets lost and you substitute it with another carbon, not tmura, not tmura, but I have to bring a substitute because the original got lost. And then you find the original. What do you do with it? Do you burn it? No. That's what we learn over here. And when you have a live animal that you substituted because it got lost, or you put a what is it called? A guarantee. You guaranteed it. I forgot the word in Hebrew. So that live one you don't burn. And finally, the last one in the pasuk, shlamim, mashlamim, faglim, umispaglim, just like the shlamim. So Rashi learns the first word mefaglim means that they can make something that comes with it. Pigol, what's pigol? As the kohen is shechting the animal, he thinks himself he's going to eat this animal in 3 days from now instead of the 2 days that's allowed. That also makes the nesachim, the wine that comes together with it, also makes it pigol. So shlamim, mefaglim, umispaglim, it itself, the animal itself becomes pigol. The wine that comes together with it becomes pigol. Taisus says it's the reverse. Okay, but the point is, it has the ability to make itself pigol plus the other thing, the wine. I've called mefaglim, umispaglim. Okay. And now we have another source for the chatos, that when the chatos touches another carbon, that other carbon becomes like the original, and so to every other carbon. We learn this from mincha. Just like a mincha becomes kadosh when the mincha touches something else, that other thing has the kedusha of the mincha. So to any other carbon. Says the Gemara, I have two sources now. I have the chatos, that when the chatos touches something, it becomes like the chatos, and I have the mincha. Now, why do I need both? So the fact is that if I wouldn't have a need for each one, in other words, if I couldn't make a tzrichusa, then it would be shnei ksuvim habayim ke'echad. I have two psukim that say the same thing. And what happens when I have two psukim that say the same exact halacha? I cannot learn any other carbon from it. So we'd be stuck. We'd be stuck at mincha and chatos, that they touch other things. Those other things become like the mincha, the chatos, but not a shlamim, not a oila. But because I have a need for each and every pasuk, so it's not a shnei ksuvim habayim ke'echad, and therefore, milamdim, you could learn it out. Since the mincha is soft, so it has the ability to give off, to penetrate another mincha. It doesn't seem like it in the lashon, but that's how Rashi learns. Mibala doesn't mean that it absorbs. It absorbs to another mincha. But I would think the chatos meat doesn't have that ability to absorb because it's not soft. Yashmin chatos, the karir. Karir over here does not mean cold. It means it has the ability to penetrate, to go through, because it's oil, oil that's not oil. I mean fat that's melted fat has the ability to go into another food source. Mincha emeloi. I think a bunch of flour doesn't have that ability to penetrate another food. Tzricha, that's why I need the pasuk for mincha and the pasuk of chatos. And then he continues, chatos. Ma chatos in a bo'el min achulin ubeyoim ubeyodei imanas. So we have three halachas here. So this is very interesting. When you take Meiser Sheni, you have a bunch of produce, and you give yourself 10%. Basically, you have to take that money or whatever, the fruit, you go up to Yerushalayim, and with that fruit, that money, you could buy any type of food item. Can you buy a shlamim with that money? You owe a shlamim to the Beis HaMikdash. Can you buy a shlamim? The answer is no. But what if you don't owe it? What if you want to donate it? Then you could. So it says the Gemara like this. Chatos, ma chatos in a ba element achulin. You cannot purchase a chatos. Chatos you can't donate. It's if you did an avera, the shogeg, you have to bring a chatos. So you cannot use Meiser Sheni money. It has to come out of your pocket. And you have to do it during the day. And the kohen uses his right finger. Avkol in a ba element achulin, all korbanos. You cannot use Meiser Sheni money, and you have to do it during the day. With the right hand. The chad is minolan. How do I know? Chad is Rav Chizam Akrov. Yikir Aaron is para chad shaloi mishaloi. Loi means from his own pocket. But loi mishal tzibur, you don't buy it from the communal money. But loi mishal meiser, and certainly not certainly, but not with meiser sheni money. Bayoim. Ask the Gemara, how do I know that has to be done during the day? B'yom tzavoisa in Afka. I learned from a different pasuk. B'yom tzavoisa. Says the Gemara kedinas, but you're right. I learned it from b'yom tzavoisa. Not from Vikir Varen's Parachaz Shaloi, but we're just saying the different halachas that apply to chatas. We don't. It's not like it came from this pasuk. We know this halacha from a different place. The Tana just wanted to remind you of this halacha. It's not important for now. The Tana could have done it without it also. You're going to tell me you learn that you need your right hand from this pasuk. You learn it from another place. Here's an example of both words, the word koyin and the word etzba. So Rabbi Rechana says anytime that says either one of these words, it means with the right hand. Ha koyin, anytime it says koyin, means right. Anytime it says etzba, means right. So you see, so I can learn now from Rabbi Bachana. What do I need our pasuk over here? It says, "Gemara, you're right. Kedina asba. It's not important. I could have learned it out. I do learn it out from Rabbi Bachana, but I'm just giving you a list of different halachas in chatos. One of them is during the day, which I don't need our pasuk. I already know it. One of them is the right. I can learn from Rabbi Bachana. Okay, great. So when we go back to this pasuk, if it says the word etzba, then you're right. Etzba means the right. But if it just says kohen, then it doesn't mean the right. Etzba lo b'ay kuna. Kahuna b'ay etzba. You need both of them. You need kahuna and etzba in order to make sure that it's the right. Okay, and finally, asham. Ma asham atzmoise mutar. You can take the asham and make a flute out of it or whatever you want to do with it. Here, it says in the pasuk, yeah, I forgot to take out, I have to, the top, where it says etzba kohen is not good. It should say asham lo yeh or whatever. The asham, the kohen could use it. So ma'asham atzmois mutarim, of kol atzmois mutarim. Okay, so that's that. Omar Rava Pshitali, Dav Tzadik Ches Omud Beis. It's simple to me, it's pasha to me. Dam chatas lemata, dam oila lemala. This is gewaltige stuff. So we're going back to when blood hits the clothing, you have to wash the blood of the chatas hits the clothing, you have to wash the clothing. Only by a chatas. So Gemara discusses, says Rava, what happens if the chatas blood is touching the clothing? And then on top of that, you put the blood of oila. It's pasha that the chatas blood is touching the clothing. So of course you have to wash it. I don't care about what's above it. Tal kibus. As Rava, by Rava, dam oila lemata, dam chatas lemala mau. Interesting shayla. The oila hits the clothing. So let's say it does a 5-inch stain. And then after that, the chatas hits that same exact spot. So here's the question. Now do I have to wash the clothing? Because there's almost like a barrier between the chatas blood and the oila blood. The oila blood doesn't allow the chatas blood to touch the clothing maybe. So Rava says, Mao, Mishum Nugeo, is it because the blood is touching the clothing, and it's actually the chatas blood is touching, therefore you have to wash the clothing? Or Dilma Mishum Biluo, or perhaps it's because we're concerned about penetrating and being absorbed by the blood. Over here it's not absorbed. Why? Because the oil blood is below it. I wasn't zoicha to understand 100%. To tell you the truth, I asked my chavrusa and this and that. I saw that the Mesifta brings, he talks about it, because it's mimanav shach. If there's a layer of oil blood, so then the chatas blood is not touching. And if the chatas blood is touching, so then it's also absorbing. So like how do you differentiate between those two things? The one says no, it's touching, but it's not absorbing. I view the oil blood like a piece of plastic. You put a piece of plastic on the clothing, and then you put blood on top of it. It didn't touch. It didn't touch and it didn't penetrate. The Gemara is not looking at it like that. You have to understand exactly what the Gemara means. Okay, next. So, first of all, what do you do? What do you do when you have tuma on a beged? What do you do? So there's something called a mikvah. This is mikvah begadim over here. And you bring it to the mikvah. I'll show you in a second. So ask the Gemara, Pshitali, dam al bigdoi choitzet. If you have blood on your clothing, it's a chatzitza. How could you bring it into the mikvah? You can't bring it into the mikvah. If it's Benny, you have blood all the time. We had a guy in the Hebrew Shir last night that's a painter. And I told him, I said, you come here to Shir a lot of times, you have like stains, like paint things on the, you don't care. He says, no, absolutely not. I said, what about blood? Of course I care. It depends on what you're used to, what you're not used to. But then they said, well, he's also a chovesh. He's a paramedic. So then he doesn't care about blood. So that's the Gemara's next thing. What if he's both? So let's just go over this. In order for something to be a chatzitza, it has to be most of the clothing and that you're makbid. You have to be concerned about it. You don't want this, but that's most of the clothing. If it's only one of the two, then it's midrabanan. In other words, if you're makbid, you don't want even one. Nobody wants on their white shirt one little tiny drop of blood. Nobody's going to walk around like that. Most people. So that's makbid, but it's not on the roiv. It's not on most of your shirt. So that midrabanan is considered a chatzitza. So revav al bigdoi. What if he has like a oil stain, or like Rashi says, from a candle? How do you say it? A wax. Thank you. Wax. A wax stain. Revav al bigdoi choitzitz. The moicher revav who ain't a choitzitz. If this guy all he does the whole day is sells fat and oils or wax, so a little bit on his clothing is nothing. He's used to it. By Rava Damur Revav al bigdoi mao. What if he has both? He has two things. He has a stain, a blood stain, and he also has oil stain, two stains. Mamish a shlamazel, one of these guys that walks around with the stains on the shirt. Says Gemara, I don't understand. Im tabachu, if he's a butcher, but he does care about oil stains, so it's not. It should be a chatzitza. And if he's a guy that sells oil, but he doesn't want red stains. Says he sells both. He's a butcher, but he also sells oily stuff. So the shaila is on one stain, one type of stain, he doesn't care. Atarti kopid. So it says Rashi Loshen, it's a genai. It's like a busha. Nobody wants two types of stains. If you get a little coffee in your shirt, new. You have coffee in your shirt and also what's a good donut, chocolate. That's already, that's exaggerated. But he's the type of guy that doesn't care about any kind of stains. Take it. Hadron aloch dam chatos, hadron aloch dam chatos, hadron aloch dam chatos. Says the Mishnah, Tful yoyim u'mechusik kippurim. So we know, we did this, but we got to do it again. If a person is tamei and he goes to the mikvah, so the mikvah removes part of his tumah, but not completely. He doesn't become completely tar unless it becomes nighttime. Now, there's certain tumas that he doesn't become completely tar unless he brings a carbon. Let's say a zav, he'd have to bring a carbon. So Tvul Yoim Mechusik Kippurim, Einon Cholgin B'Kochim Lechol La'erev. Since he's not 100% tar, he cannot participate in the chalukah. He can't get a part of the carbon. The kohanim, they divvy up the carbon. He doesn't get a piece. Oinen Noigeya Ve'ini Makru. Oh! I can't say a kiss from Hashem here, but it's Avremi Cohen. He's a oinen today. I don't know if he's still not anymore. Why? There was a levaya? 4 o'clock. Okay, I hope he's Michael me. So he was a oinen today, and a oinen. An oinen negeya, he could touch the carbon. Ve'ini makriv, he cannot perform the avodah in the Beis Hamikdash. Ve'ino yichayilek lechol la'erev. So Avremi Cohen, if he wanted to take a part of the carbon, he can't. He's a oinen. Bali mumim, a guy that has a mum who cannot perform the avodah. Bein bal mum overin, bein bali mum and overin, bein bali mum and kvum. Whether it's a mum that'll Rahman not never go away, or a mum that'll go away. Cholkin v'oichlem. A bal mum could eat. This is important also. Chatzitza, I said before, is rubayu makbid. The rice is rubayu makbid. Look at this. Mefurish pasuk. Kolisha sher boy mum. That's pasuk chof aleph, and pasuk chof bezit says lechem alikov bekotche akadashim mekotchim yoichel. He could eat yoichel. He could eat kotchim. So that's a mefurish pasuk that a bal mum could eat. A cholgim yoichlem, they could take a piece of it. They take a chelik of it and bring it home. Avaloi makrim, they cannot perform the avodah obviously because the bal mum and the bal mum is possible avodah. Kol shein roel avodah, and if you cannot perform the avodah, in a chelik babasar, you cannot get a piece of the carbon. We know a kohen gets the hide of the animal, but if he cannot eat the meat, if he can't get a piece of the meat, then he can't get the hide. If he was tamei at the time of the zrika, and he became tar, he went to the mikveh, the whole thing, and it's already a shemesh, and he's completely tar. and they put the chalavim, they put the parts of the animal that goes on the mizbeach, they put it on after he became tar. So he still doesn't get anything. Why? When a person is able to do the avodah, then he could have a part of it. But since at the time of the zrika he wasn't able to do it, at the time of the zrika, that's what's keveya, and therefore this particular kohen cannot participate in the chalukah, in the portion that he typically would have. But since he's tamei, he doesn't get it. Rabbi Isai, have a wonderful day. Yishkoyach. Sorry again for not giving share this morning. Be'ezer Hashem, tomorrow, if everything goes well.
Merit the schus of spreading Torah throughout the world. Sponsor a share today. MDYsponsor.com or sponsor at MDYDaf.com.